Welcome to Quarantine with Lou. I am your host and strategic partner in cost reduction, reducing your business expenses forever, Louis Fernandez. And today we're joined by Eric Erickson, a guy with a truly phenomenal real estate investing strategy. But before we get into that, if you're a fan of inspiring people and informative content, then you've come to the right place because that's what we do. So go ahead and tell the like button about the exceptionally low interest rates so they don't miss out on investment opportunity. And with that, Eric, how you doing, my friend?
Doing awesome. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
So I'm excited to talk to you. Well, every time I'm always excited to talk to you. I feel like I learn so much every conversation between the business coaching and the real estate and, just your story in general. And that is one thing I love to do here is get people's stories because I feel like we don't realize how much heart is going into these everyday business transactions that we're doing. For us, it's I'm just putting a ham in the cart because I'm hungry and not realizing, all of the everything behind that little purchase that we're making or whatever it is. And you and I have talked before. I think your story is really interesting, and I'd love for you to kind of share with the group about, well, first let's start about where you're from originally. And
Sure. Yeah, no, appreciate that. Yeah, I grew up in Spokane, Washington, up in the Pacific Northwest, and I was a cop's kid growing up, and living under union rules, as they say, and just growing up like every other kid did. I went on to I started my career as an engineer, so I kind of have that math and science bent, and I'm fairly introverted and fairly engineering as a result, as my wife will probably claim. So she's the fun one of the group. I'm more of the data guy, and so that's always fun. But no, so I started engineering. I have a degree in chemical engineering, and I've done like zero chemical engineering in my life. So it's just one of those things you just don't know where life's gonna take you. One of the big reasons for that is that when I first left college, so just to date myself, we left right at the time of 9/11, and so we got out of school in 2001, and it was kind of a weird economy, and weird market, and weird job stuff going on, and so we ended up at a little engineering firm that's actually a really big global firm, but we ended up in one of their satellite offices up in Washington because I could name all three of the Tri-Cities. So for people who grew up in Washington State, they know what those are. And because I could name all three of them, they thought I was a local, which I wasn't, but that's okay. It worked to my benefit. But from there, we moved around a little bit, but I eventually ended up with Honeywell. And Honeywell's a great corporation, big corporation, do a lot of different things. Most people only know them for their thermostats, but I never worked for a thermostat part of the company at all. And while I was there, they helped me get my MBA. And that's really where this journey really started was, converting an engineer brain into a business brain. Your blinders start to come off a little bit about the potentials of life. And I realized I didn't want to keep fixing stuff all my life. And so we went into the engineering side and switched over to the business side. And as I say, that's made all the difference. Since then, so I was with Honeywell for 13 years, did a lot of different things with Honeywell. Was in management, was in engineering, was in pricing, a lot of great stuff. And one day I was like, I like the idea of investing, and I've always been a reader. And so you talk about the speculator and people who do a lot of reading and are on the sidelines. That was me for 20 years, right? And people say, "Oh, do you invest?" I'm like, no, I just read about it. I had my money subscriptions, and I had my Fortune magazines, and I read about all these other exploits, and I was just in my safe little job raising a little family, and so I hit a milestone year. Some people call it a midlife crisis, but I started looking around saying, hey, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And so I started asking questions, and I really wanted to do investing, and I'd always been of the belief that if you could match what the stock market was doing, then you were doing pretty well. And one day I was talking to a friend of mine who does real estate investing. He's like, yeah, I look at any investment, if it's less than 20%, I don't look at it. And that blew my mind. Wait, that's
Wow.
2x what the stock market gets. You're like, yeah, I won't touch it. If it's less than 20, it's not worth it for me. I'm like, wait a minute, it's not worth it for me. And that sounds like a once in a lifetime deal. It's like lifetime deals happen every week. And so that started getting my gears thinking a little bit about what I was doing. And
Was this
so
another, is this another Honeywell employee, or were you starting
no, this was,
play around?
yeah. Yeah, so this was we had moved down here to Tucson. It was a friend of mine who I knew from socially, and I was just curious about what he did. And so I asked him, give me some description, and he was in real estate, and I think it was like camp out or something. I don't remember exactly the context of where it was, but yeah, and it definitely wasn't at Honeywell, because when I made my decision to leave Honeywell, everyone looked at me like I was crazy. So definitely was leaving the pack there. But no, so after, and it still took me like a year and a half from that conversation to the time we actually left. It still took time. I mean, I'm a slow moving engineer at the end of the day. And so where my watershed moment is, or my aha moment was, is that to invest, you have to be able to look at deals and talk to people and put stuff together and analyze. I love all that stuff. I love that. That's the aspect of the investing part that I like to do. And I had a note on my desk, and it said, call this person, right? And that's all it said. Just it was a call, and it was a name. And it sat on my desk for 2 weeks. I'm like, if I can't make a single phone call, how am I gonna move quickly on a fix and flip? How am I gonna find a great buy and hold property if I can't even make a phone call in 2 weeks? And so that's kind of when we realized, hey, Honeywell's a great company, and I've learned a lot of stuff from Honeywell. I learned a lot of structure. I learned a lot of P&L type things, a lot of finance things. How what a good business looks like, what a bad boss is, right? All those components. What a really important customer looks like. But I was like, I needed to make a decision. Do I be a Honeywell guy for life and just put my head down and put on the Honeywell red, or do I try something new? And so we chose the latter, and it's been a great ride since then.
You say we chose the latter, right? Like that's it. We just made that decision, and I can imagine the leap from, based on your description, that had to be a 6-figure job. I've worked for Fortune 100 as well, and I know you got bonus structures, you got healthcare, you've got a lot of reasons that they want to make it difficult for you to walk away from that.
Yeah, for sure.
And this, we just chose the latter thing. I feel like so at the time, were you the primary breadwinner at the house?
Yeah.
Were you the sole breadwinner?
Mostly. Emily she had some side businesses, but they weren't. They're more hobby, on the hobby level than big money making stuff.
So how do you have that conversation where you say, look, I want to leave this safety net, and I want to venture out there to a place where I'm not going to get paid every 2 weeks. And we don't have all of these wonderful benefits, and we don't have the safety and security, and I don't have any clients yet, and I haven't thrown in the revenue yet, but I really want to do this.
Yeah.
You say you're kind of like this methodical engineer. You must be one hell of a salesman as well.
No, not even close. No, not even close. In fact, I've gotten compliments of how bad of a salesman I am. You're saying, hey, that's why we like you, because we can tell you're not trying to sell us because you're not very good at
it. So how do you bring your wife along? That now for the last 13 years, you guys have been, and honestly, like this is a decision that truly every entrepreneur at some point makes, right? You've got to make this call. And Damon John talks about, like, he was part-time at Red Lobster, and he started working fewer hours, and everybody has this kind of origin story of you started somewhere else, you pick something up, but at some point you have to make this leap. It's not just a step out. I mean, this is a leap, and I'm just wondering, what, like, you must have confidence, like how do you do this pro cons list to get the confidence to say, you know what, I can do this. I can make this work.
Yeah. So there was a bunch of things in my head that I had to figure out before I was comfortable with it. Um, Emily, my wife, she made it much simpler. She's like, as long as you make as much as you make now, I don't care. I don't care what you do. And so that was kind of our side bet of, as long as my lifestyle's not impacted, great. So that was one criteria in my bucket list, is that my wife can notice the difference in her pay, or her amount she got from me, or into the bank account. And that was kind of our metric and that actually kind of hurt us the first couple of years. And I'll come back to that. But so that was the first metric. And the other one in my mind was, because I had 13 years with Honeywell and a couple experiences before that, I had a decent resume, right? I had a lot of good experiences. And so for me, that was actually my biggest safety net in my head was, if this didn't work out in 6 months, I could go either back to the same job if it was still available, or one very similar to it, or I could just rely on my resume to go, because we weren't, it, for me, it was a much easier decision at this point in my life versus if I had been coming out of college, right? Because I didn't have any experiences, I didn't have anything to fall back on. And so for me, that resume that was the safety line in a lot of ways. It didn't help, that didn't hurt, I should say, that Honeywell had contributed to a 401k plan for all those years. And so in some ways they provided me my own pull emergency cord if needed, and so that didn't hurt either. But no, we had a plan, and it was kind of, hey, if it doesn't work out, it's not like we're starting from scratch. We'll just go find another job, right? And so that was I had enough confidence in myself and the things that I had done up to that point that I knew had value to the marketplace, that we could go find a similar type position if things didn't go well.
So you gave yourself a 6-month timeline
Mm-hmm.
to make things work. You said you would go back then. So tell us, how did that go? So your initial leap, how did this play out? And were your dreams immediately realized, and within 3 weeks you were making bank?
No, not at all. I mean, in fact, that's because I had eyes wide open on the fact that it wouldn't be immediate. It probably made it easier because of that. So I finally was able to make that call, right? So that person whose name was on my desk, that was that watershed moment. Once we left, I was able to sit down with him, and he gave me some really great advice, and we followed that advice, to the T. And if it's not one thing, I'm pretty persistent in what I do. And so we just followed, so we joined Keller Williams as the first stop of our real estate investing approach, was getting our real estate license. And so I got mine first, and Keller Williams had some great training programs. And so instead of trying to make it up on our own, I just followed the model, right? There's a couple of different books that Gary Keller, who's the CEO of Keller Williams, has put out. And he writes about great models and how to follow those. And so one of the classes was called Ignite, to ignite your career. And I did exactly what they asked, right? I made the phone calls, I wrote the letters, I went and visited the properties, and I followed the process. And so that's a lot of people talk about you should, if you're going to buy a company, you should buy a franchise because they have a process. Well, that's what we kind of did as far as real estate went, right? We didn't go join small brokerage without any training. We went to a big one that had a lot of training. It was essentially like buying a franchise. And so we just followed the process.
But so did you start as a real estate agent? Because I thought you went straight into investing. You started off.
No. Yeah. So this friend of mine who was an investor, right? He was a real estate investor. His advice was, and when I went and talked with him, he's like, hey, get your real estate license first, help other people invest, right? So you're not having to use your own money, your own capital, and make a lot of mistakes. See what other people are doing, and it's working well for them. And so we actually built a real estate database or business first, just your traditional buying and selling. And as we were doing that, I was learning how to be an investor.
So when did you make your first investment? Okay, because that was the other thing I was thinking about is, real estate investing, even if you're making 20%, if you want to make as much as you were making before, you got to have a significant amount of cash that you got to put all to work to get that,
Right.
that 20%. So that was certainly something that was kind of brewing in the back of my mind, is like, how do you as an investor, generate that return that matches your income? So this makes a lot of sense that you went into kind of a peripheral or tangential career field to the one that you wanted to eventually get into. Now, are you still doing the real estate like as an agent, or are you full-time investor now?
Yeah, so I consider myself a full-time investor. Emily still is a full-time real estate agent. She's a great buyer's agent, and actually she's a lot better than I am at it. She knows how to find people great houses, and so we still, from an income perspective, we still generate quite a bit of income just from our real estate retail activities, right? And so that database that we built in the first couple of years, we still rely on quite a bit. And in fact, it's the database that we use to find our investors too, right? So we're very much about working from our database, from our network. My best investors are people who were either past clients or who've helped us with our original real estate business.
So at what point did you make your first investment? The first one where you're like, this is for me to put my money down and really kick this thing off?
Yeah, so I started attending our local real estate clubs almost from the first day after I left Honeywell. In fact, I might even started going before I left Honeywell. And so really it was getting that education and figuring out what different models I went to. And I went to some seminars, and I went to some bought some products that I wish I hadn't bought, but I learned a couple little things here and there. And so we started making offers and trying to find a deal, quote unquote, probably at the first 6 months. But they're all pretty small little things. My first cash flowing property we probably had after the first year and a half, maybe 2 years into the property.
Okay. So when did you, okay, I know your niche, and I've heard the spiel. So I guess, maybe, and I'm not sure what order to go into, is whether, when you discovered this investment strategy, or, when you started executing that investment strategy. Maybe discovery, and then you could tell us a little bit about it, like, and
Sure.
what it is.
Yeah. So so there's a couple of niches that I like. The one that you and I have talked about is for long-term buy and hold properties. So it's rental properties with the tweak on how to create that ownership mentality in your tenant, and also creating some some time fences there. And if anyone's interested in talking more about that, I would love to have that opportunity. But basically, I'm helping others invest in real estate without them having to be in real estate. And so that's kind of the right. And so I'm lending expertise to our, either busy professionals or successful small business owners who are really good at what they do, and helping them invest and doing it in a way where they don't have to go through all of the years that I went through to get where I'm at, and really kind of give them a bottle package. Because that's, as I mentioned on the front of that, I like to follow processes, right? And so all of the investment models that I have found are the ones that I like, right? There's lots of ways to invest in real estate. That's for the first thing to say, is that there's as big as the universe as there are mutual funds in the stock market, as there are different models in real estate, right? There's lots of different pieces of dirt and things on top of dirt and how to invest in that dirt. So there's lots of ways to make it work. And so the ones that I liked are the ones that have an existing process. So none of the stuff that I invest in currently did I come out of my own brain, right? I'm an engineer, right? I follow processes, I follow guidelines. And so that's what I do currently.
And so, and I don't know how much you want to share about it, but I really like that, you talk about investing in real estate without, what is it? The termites, toilets, and, there's like three T's. I'm forgetting now. Tenants.
Yeah. Yep.
Can't believe I forgot that was the most important.
Yeah.
But the principle of creating an ownership mentality in your renter, and having them really take care of the property as though it's their own, which I think is genius. And We'll put Eric's contact information so you can get more details on how he's figured that out. So I think that's really cool, and the returns are outstanding, and it's a win for literally everyone involved.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool, and it makes it very easy for somebody like me to make a recommendation because it's something that I can believe in and
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned there's another or others that you are interested in that it seems I haven't heard of.
Yeah, so I also do a little bit of land investing. It's wholesale, land type stuff, residential lots. It's something that I don't need partners to help with, right? It's kind of I don't want to call it a side business, but it's an investment model that isn't super cash intensive, and so it's something that I do on the side, and was probably the first model I followed, and it's fun because it's more introverted, it's more database driven, and I don't have to talk to a ton of people for it, and so it kind of speaks to my engineer side of my brain.
How do you flip a piece of dirt that has nothing on it? Like, are you improving that land in any way?
No, no, land's interesting because land, and it depends what kind of land, right? We're not talking about downtown high rise land, right? We're talking about, so if you're here in Tucson, we're talking about stuff that's 5-10 miles out, that's probably on a dirt road, and there's tracts of land that are acre, 5 acres that at some point people thought were going to be the next big thing, and people bought and aren't worth that, right? And so you have to sell this land for $10,000 per 5 acres, right? You, I mean, that's a thing, right? You can go buy 5 acres for $10,000 here in Tucson. No one wants to live there, right? Because it's out in the boonies, but it's possible, right? I can drive in half an hour and find 5 acres. And so the problem with that is that it's very difficult to sell that land in a traditional way. To find a realtor that's interested in listing your $10,000 of land, that's a tough one, right? When if they have to drive 30 minutes, put a sign on $10,000 piece of land that they're only going to make 3% on, when they takes the exact same amount of effort to find a $200,000 house to sell, right? So it's underrepresented, right? There's a couple realtors that do it well, but most realtors, they don't want to deal with land, right? If it's under $100,000, it's very difficult to get excited to go through the exact same sale process as any other listing would, and really help that client out. And so there's a lot of land that people just don't know how to market, they don't know how to deal with. And so we buy it on the wholesale, knowing that it is hard to market and it is hard to do it. So we make some offers that are lower and try to sell them at a low price point too.
Wow. Okay. That's legit. I'm a fan. It's an interesting niche there that you have discovered as well. So I mean, in both of these models, I like a lot. I think it's pretty cool. I've done some investment in multifamily myself. Actually, kind of funny because it was is not was. I'm invested in a property that is student athlete housing in Wake Forest, North Carolina. And when I looked at that, I looked at the returns, and I was like, man, this is solid, right? Like, Wake Forest athletic program is not going to stop anytime soon. Yeah,
Right.
except when there's a freaking pandemic. It's like, wow, did not see that one coming. Like, there's a lot of stuff that I could see, like, oh, I could see where this would go wrong, but holy cow, man. So we were able to still keep it rented, got creative there, and helped out some international students and stuff. But I just thought it was kind of funny that you just can't pick, like, nothing is truly safe, and,
No.
and it's a matter of how much safety you're going to be comfortable with, and how much risk you want to take.
So on that point, just to kind of give another example. So when I left Honeywell, so here in Arizona, Honeywell is mainly an aerospace company. And so that's its primary mission is making aerospace parts for airplanes and the such. So when I left the company 4 years ago, people looked at me as like, you're leaving a blue chip great job that is super secure. And yet when I call those same friends and people that I worked with 4 years later, their jobs of all the jobs here in Tucson that are most impacted, it's been the aerospace market, right? Because there's literally no one's flying, and so they don't need parts if you're not flying. And so you never know which industry is truly safe or not safe. And I have a lot of friends who are still at Honeywell, they're doing well, but there's a lot of people who lost their jobs through layoffs. And so, I have no way of knowing, 4 years ago, whether or not today, if I would still have a job in that industry. And so, to your point, you don't know.
Yeah. And one of the things the ways I like to describe it is we're at the mercy of a CEO who's going to make a decision. And, I've been talking recently about the My Pillow guy.
Yeah.
Right? Regardless of where you feel like where you stand politically, this man took a stand as a CEO. It did not go well business wise. Again, right. Politics aside, his business is suffering tremendously for the decisions that he's made. And there's, stores are not selling his brand. I mean, he is getting squeezed tight. And I think about, so I hear this on the news and my mind immediately goes to, I've been in manufacturing before and I know what an assembly line looks like, and I think about those people that are creating this product that had no basis, no bearing in that decision, but they are the ones that are going to pay the heftiest price for the decisions of this guy, and Elon Musk has done it in the past when he smoked that joint on Joe Rogan and the Tesla stock dumped and they had to, lay off a bunch of, like, you don't know the dude in charge. He represents the company. He does or says something idiotic and it costs his business. You're the one that's going to pay.
Right.
And you have there's nothing you could do about that. So that's true, and I think you probably know that. I used to jump out of airplanes in the military. Okay. So there's a certain amount of risk that I am comfortable with. I like to say I do crazy. I don't do stupid. So, I'll do crazy things. I don't like doing stupid things. And I think about your story and that's crazy, but it wasn't stupid. I mean, yeah, you made a right call, or I mean, of course you made a call with, we can't look into the future. You have data in front of you. I think one of the things that maybe we're not touching on enough is the confidence that you had in yourself. I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'm not gonna lie. I mean, we were super lucky, right? We had a couple of clients that came in that maybe newer agents shouldn't have been able to land, that we landed. Again, mostly because of my wife and her smile. I mean, my smartest marketing tool that I've done is I put my wife on my business cards. I mean, that's I'm no dummy. I'm not gonna hide behind this mug. So but I mean, there was definitely a couple of clients that were like, had they not come when they came, we may not be having this conversation, right? I might be back in a manufacturing role. And so we were definitely confident in our plan, but at the same time recognize that it could have gone either way, right? It wasn't a for sure, it wasn't a determinate thing that was going to happen. And so we're super grateful that it has gone this well, as long as it has, and that it continues to go well. I mean, for me, the biggest thing is that I think I've been successful in anything that I've done, right? And I think that's a big message for anyone, is that as long as you put in the work, you're going to get the results out. And so it's just a question of what you want to put the work into. You talked about those workers on the assembly line. That CEO is making them suffer, but do they still have control of their lives? They don't have to stay at that company. If they don't like what's going on, they don't agree with his message, or they don't agree with what's going on, and go get another job, right? And I think that's a message that most people miss, is that we're in control of our own lives, and you put the work in, you're gonna get the results out. And I was willing to put the work in.
Yeah. So let's talk to me about that initial, that first year or so, because there may be some people in that realm too. They've made this leap and they're reaching that point of, do I go back or do I keep going? And how do you keep yourself motivated? And what were the indicators in your mind that you were moving on the right track? So how did that first
Yeah,
year?
I mean, yeah, and so like I said, we probably I didn't have my first listing until probably 4 months in, from the time that I left Honeywell until the time we actually had a sign in the yard, and that's not even getting paid, right? That's just a sign in the yard.
Hmm.
But we just kept working at it, and so by the end of year one, either we I have to go back and look again. It was either we made just as much or just right at that point that I made at Honeywell. And honestly, it was actually, so getting back to that point, having that number in our head, what we're trying to get to, has actually kind of been a detriment, because now the first 3 years we hit that number almost exactly every year.
Hmm.
We could never go above it because there's like, all we have to do is hit that number. And so trying to reframe, what our goals are and what we want to do, it's powerful, because it doesn't just help you achieve what you want to achieve, but sometimes it limits you to exactly that number.
That's wild. So for 3 years, you just met what you didn't change your goal.
No, we changed. I mean, that was every year. It's like, hey, we're going to grow a little bit, and then we go back, and then they were like, we hit the number again. That's great. Well, and then the third year, like, wait a minute, why do we keep hitting the same number all the time? Yeah, so it was kind of getting that. It took a while to get that corporate life out of our consciousness, out of our, this is what's okay.
So you were 4 months before you got your first client. How big was your savings account when you made the leap? Were you still like, because I think you mentioned 6 months, right? You said you had given yourself 6 months.
Yeah, so we had enough reserves to last at least a year, and so 6 months was kind of that. Hey, we need to make the go or no go decision, because then I got to focus on getting a job type of deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, so by month 6, we had enough clients that it was, we might not have only had a month more, right, to make, pushing. It's like we're pushing that go no go decision out, right? And so by month 6, maybe it was only month 7 or 8 that had 2 more months to breathe, and we just kept working on it and just try to keep pushing that number further away from us.
So how did that go? How were those first 4 months?
So I mean, like I said, I didn't have any. People talk about, were you frustrated? And I'm like, no, because I was building a business, right? I was, contacting people, letting people know that I changed jobs, writing notes. So I didn't feel frustrated, because I knew it was gonna be work. So to me, it was just like going to work every day.
Yeah.
It didn't seem any different, because I didn't have this, hey, I've got to eat tomorrow pressure. It was, I've got a plan. They've given me this blueprint to follow. I'm just following the blueprint.
Yeah. I like that a lot. So 6 months in, and now you said at 3 years you were hitting the same number, and then something changed. So what did you do at that point when you reframed, as you said?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that finally kicked in, one was, the investing side stopped being an idea, and we started chasing that more. And so, the two different investment models I was working on starting to actually produce. We had one deal where we made $50,000 in one deal, and I was like, whoa, didn't know that was even possible. And it was, again, and I don't know how much of that was my own ability and how much was just blind luck, because we haven't. It's not like we reproduced that every time.
Now, was
but
that fix and flip, a land, a rental? What was it?
It was a land deal.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
dude, I'm gonna start looking at land out here. you
yeah.
need to talk to you offline a little bit more about that land investment strategy.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. $50,000 on land.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. Sorry. Okay, I got distracted. So okay, we're talking about the reframe. Keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, that deal was a big eye opener of, hey, this, here's the things that are the potential that are out there. I mean, I think the average, I saw a stat recently, the average fix and flip in Phoenix, they make 60,000 per flip. That's just the average amount, right? And so there's a bigger world out there than living paycheck to paycheck, and it's just figuring it out and believing in it and looking for it, so that when you do find it, you know what to do with it to keep going.
But that fix and flip isn't exactly like, you know, the what is that that TV Home and Garden HGTV style flipping. I mean, I've looked into that. The problem is, like, you make a wrong call on something, and it's an expensive decision if you miss it on an inspection. I mean, this isn't.
Yeah.
Um,
Right, and I'm just giving that as an example of a
Yeah.
recent stat I saw. I don't even do it, right? I don't even do fix and flips because one, I'm not a contractor, right? And making those bad decisions that you talked about, I'm more likely to make those than someone who's built a house before, right? And so, yeah, so it's recognizing your strength. So I don't do fix and flips, but I know people who do, and the ones that do it right do it very well. I also know people who've tried it who are now working at jobs again. So it's, you know, every model and every industry has their, you know, ways you do it and ways you don't. And you know, within real estate, there's certain things I'll never try, right? And you know, fix and flips is one of those.
Yeah. So you reset some goals, and so what is your goal? How long have you been doing this, by the way?
So we are in our 5th year.
Okay, so year 1, 2, 3. You know, you hit the number, the Honeywell number, and you held for 3 years. Which, by the way, I mean, that's not too shabby.
Yeah,
you know, that's pretty good.
It wasn't going into, you know, wasn't going in at 6 o'clock in the morning. You know, wasn't doing my, you know, my 50, 60 hours.
You weren't requesting vacation from anybody?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We literally did a deal while we were in Paris, you know, sitting beneath the Eiffel Tower. We were working on a landing. So I mean, my wife wasn't super happy about it. She wanted to be on the Eiffel Tower, and I'm here on the phone trying to get this deal done. But we did it, right? And so you just don't. Even at one point, the buyer was like, "Where are you guys?" I'm like, "Paris." I didn't lie to the guy. Again, I'm not a sales guy. I just told him how it was. But that was great. We like Paris. I actually think it kind of helped the deal, to be honest with you.
Paid for your trip?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, so year 1, 2, 3, you're hitting the baseline, and then year 4, is that when you make a change now? Is it year 4?
Well, like I said, it's and I think it's one of those things where it, you know, I look back on it, it wasn't this like really even line. You know, you talk about, you see that chart, people say, here's my path and here's how I actually got there, right? And that's how I feel too, is that, you know, there are these up and downs. But, you know, year 3, even though we hit the baseline, we started putting some things into place that allowed for year 4 to boom, right? And so and year 5 was on the same track. So yeah, and it builds on top of each other. It's kind of like that example you talk about, that bamboo tree that takes, you know, 20 years just to get out of the dirt, and the next 10 weeks it grows 20 feet or whatever crazy thing it is. You know, it kind of felt like that. Right? You just keep putting the work in, and you know, it took a little while to realize what the potential was, and I'm still working on that. I still haven't fully figured out what the potential is, and I'm still working on my limiting beliefs is the term of art people like to use.
So, you know, you were talking about this wavy line, and I think that's also interesting because, you know, you could be used to 3,000 every 2 weeks, right? Or 2,500, whatever the number is, right? Every 2 weeks, on whatever day you're going to get a deposit. And we kind of glossed over it, but you're talking about your annual number, right? And so, oh yeah, my annual number was the same, but at the same time, you also told us that you closed the land deal and you made $50,000, right? And if the annual number was around 6 figures, that means that for the other 6 months, you know, just me being my silly math here, you were missing that target, and then you got this one bang. So when do you stop holding your breath?
Yeah. And I wish I could say we were there, but there's still, I still sometimes look at that bank account like, it's been a little low. What have we got in the pipeline? It's, yeah. So definitely the first 2 years. So the term that we use in real estate, it was lumpy, right? It wasn't consistent. How do you have a consistent business? And that's hard, right? So there's volume and revenue, and then there's also consistency, because I can make the same amount years 1 and 2, but if one was all of the first 6 months and then nothing afterwards,
Yeah.
that makes for some hard eating. So it's so it's been a challenge, not a challenge, but it's been the challenge is learning how to both earn the amount that we want to earn and being consistent, right? And that consistency is just as important, right? People forget about cash flow, right? They see the big number, but they don't think about cash flow. And cash flow, that's the lifeblood of any business. And so having that cash flow is really important.
So let's talk about a little bit about your specific business, the type of person that you're looking for. When I give you the link to this and you're going to start sharing it, who's that person that you're going for, and how do you convince them that you're the right guy to talk to?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So my ideal client or my ideal partner is someone who's really good at what they do, and they have an interest in real estate, but they're held back because they don't want to be a landlord, right? They don't want to deal with finding the house, finding the tenants, dealing with maintenance or handyman, when issues come up, because they're too busy doing what they're supposed to be doing, right? So that's really my ideal client. There's other people who are out there who are interested in investing, and they want to actively do it and hold it themselves. And that's great, right? And they should do that. And I'd be happy to refer them to Emily, and she can help them find the right house. But for the people that I'm looking for, it's really that person who's interested in having a passive investment without so keeping it passive, I guess. So yeah. That's where we are strong in, is helping them really just receive that check every three months, and knowing that their investment's being taken care of.
And how much money do I need to get started with investing with you?
Yeah, so we deal with single family homes, is what our niche is. And so for Tucson, where we keep our market at, the average home is $250,000. And so either you need to have the full 250 divided by cash, or you need to be able to get a loan for an investor rate. So that's 20% down. So about 50,000 is what is the minimum entry requirement to buy a single family home for an investment.
And what about if it's my first investment? Is this a good place to start?
Yeah, that's a hard question to unpack, to be honest, because we're all in different places.
I was tossing you a softball. I'm sorry.
No, that was actually hard, because I would. So if you're in your mid 50s and you're an empty nester, then absolutely, I think that's probably a great opportunity. But if you're in your mid 30s or your mid 40s and you're still building a business, honestly, I think your time is better spent building your business, right? We really are looking for that passive investor, someone who's kind of made their money. Now they're just trying to protect it or help it grow a little bit more. Or if someone's still in their growth phase, invest in yourself, right? Invest in what you're doing, put your time in, and we're more looking for that passive investor, someone who's looking to lock down the retirement or lock down what they're already doing.
Now, you said getting that 20% with an investor rate. What about if like, I know a lot of veterans that are moving around a lot. So you get a VA loan after VA loan after VA loan. Can they apply your model to a home that they have already purchased and they're moving out? They're getting transitioned to another base. Can they contact you and say, hey, tell me about your great idea and start working that?
Yeah. So if someone's already got a house, and this doesn't have to be for your VA example, but it's a good one, especially here in Tucson with our Air Force Base.
Right.
But it's really anyone with a current house and they just don't want to deal with it. we're more than happy to partner with them and help them kind of convert it over to this, our model that we think is a little more effective. The only thing specifically to your question, as far as the VA loan goes, is that because you're not selling that house, whatever VA benefits you have left over, you can still use, but you're not going to get all it back out, right? So if you bought a $200,000 home, for example, with a VA loan, and your VA benefits $350, and you go to move to another place, you're only going to be able to get a $150,000 loan left over, right? So
Sure.
that's the one asterisk that people need to remember, is that VA loans, you have your benefit. If you sell the house, that benefit gets reset, but if you keep it, it doesn't. You don't get to do it again.
Sure. Right. Well, but then you're still getting a house at, what now it's like sub 3% anyway.
Yeah.
Interest, so you can still get your FHA and get a good deal. So I was just something that I was thinking about, with folks that I know that are moving around a lot,
Yeah.
and do this conversion as they're picking up and going to another location.
Yeah. In fact, my favorite model, I just heard, I was talking to a loan officer yesterday, and this is a great one for someone who's in their early 30s or who's just starting to buy homes, right? He called the 10 homes in 10 years model. I think it's a better every 2 years or 3 years, but don't buy that super nice house immediately, right? Buy something you think is going to be a good rental, and then move in 2 years, right? And get another one and build your portfolio slowly is a great way to do it. I have an investor friend right now where he bought his first home. He's not married, doesn't have any kids, so he's renting out all the rooms. And so that term is called house hacking, right? And all of his roommates are essentially paying for his mortgage, which is brilliant, right? Because then he can save faster for his next rental. And
right.
So yeah, there's lots of great ways to do it if you're willing to do it. It's just being aware of all those options and taking advantage of the great interest rates right now.
And do you only work in Tucson?
I only work in Tucson. Yep. So I can have investors who are nationwide, but the actual houses I invest in are here, right? So I'm literally the boots on the ground. I want to be close to them. In fact, I try not to go more than 20 minutes away from where I'm at. That helps keep the management side and keep the risk and safety much better than trying to do a out of state type of market.
And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, somebody listening to this says, yeah, that seems legit. Tucson's a growing city. Arizona's a growing state. We're one of the receiver states. I think there's a lot of potential down there. How do I get a hold of Eric?
Yeah, probably my easiest place to find me is on LinkedIn. Eric Erickson's not that common of a name, pretty easy to find. Viking Equity is the company name, and probably easiest through LinkedIn.
Awesome. And if anybody sees this on LinkedIn, I will tag you on there as well, so they can get a hold of you. So, any parting words of wisdom for the group?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity, and this wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I don't know how to take that.
It's not you, it's me. I don't like talking into a camera, so
yeah.
I'm glad. I was like, I don't know how he's expecting to talk for an hour, so I can't believe we're at 55 minutes. So that's impressive.
Yeah. No, thank you. Wow. All right. Okay. So I'll take it as a positive. And I will say that anybody who's still listening at this point, like, you have given us an hour of your time. Just give me 3 more seconds, hit the like button, maybe subscribe, right? Like, I think we've earned it. You have, at least. And with that, I think we're going to call it. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you over on LinkedIn.
Awesome.